On January 15, 2019, Kenya was shaken to its core. The DusitD2 attack shattered lives, tore families apart, and stained our soil with innocent blood. Children were orphaned, parents were buried, dreams were ended in moments. But as the smoke cleared, the pursuit for justice had just begun. 21 lives were lost and many more individuals were injured, some critically, with one survivor having a bullet lodged in his body. What followed was one of the country's most complex terror investigations. It took 6 years, 45 witnesses, forensic science, and unrelenting determination to bring the facilitators to justice. On May 22, 2025, a 61-year-old madrasa teacher Mohammed Abdi Ali and a 22-year-old Hussein Mohammed Abdile were convicted on 15 counts of facilitating a terrorist act contrary to Section 9A of Prevention of Terrorism Act, and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit an offense contrary to Section 23.2 as read with 23.4 of Prevention of Terrorism Act.
The Dusit case came as a result of the attack that took place at the DusitD2 hotel complex in Nairobi that led to the death of 21 people and several injuries. Several people sustained serious injuries. So as a result of that particular attack, that's when the investigations commenced, and leading to the charging of the 3 suspects who were charged. And one pleaded guilty, entered into plea bargain with the prosecution, and the 2 others underwent through the entire trial process. We had quite a lot of hurdles or challenges that we faced, but due to the nature of the investigations where we had multi-agency teams, we were able to overcome these challenges, because some of the challenges included things to do with the data, because electronic evidence, we are mainly relying on the electronic evidence, the level of things to do with encryption, the fact that some of these electronic evidence service providers were not from within the country, and therefore it called for us to collaborate with our foreign partners, leading to us to be able to know what are these material for evidential purposes. So that coordination, the electronic evidence, the level of encryption, those were mainly some of the issues that we faced, because we had to get all this material through the usual mutual legal assistance processes to be able to obtain this material evidentially. And as you know, such material, to obtain them, it takes a bit of time, because it has to pass through the normal diplomatic channels. In these particular cases, whereby most of it was digital evidence, the social media platforms, specifically Facebook, because in this particular case, you realize that during the planning of this particular attack, when it started from the convict, the first convict, that is Mohammed Abdile, he really utilized the Facebook to communicate with his handler in Somalia, in order to procure things to do with the school ID, the fake school ID, to enable one of the attacker move freely. Second convict, that is Mohammed Abdi, was involved in the transactions of the money that was during the planning and execution of the attack. So the mobile service providers, the M-Pesa records, came in handy to ensure that the evidence was combining all the various pieces of evidence was watertight, and created a linkage between the pieces of evidence that was available. This is a case whereby victims require to see what has been done, who was behind it, because the people who actually carried out the attackers, the suicide bomber, they all died in the attack. But who facilitated them is also equally important, because the victims need to know what really happened. And I believe the prosecutors in the case did their job, and the victims were able to know what really occurred. Hence, justice was served to us. We believe that we were able to ensure that justice has been served in the entire case here. we've been able to create synergy with all the law enforcement agencies, the intelligence services, all actors, because what has made success to this particular case is the multi-agency approach and also working closely with our foreign partners, our local partners, foreign partners, to ensure successful prosecution, successful investigation and prosecution of these cases, because you can't do it single-handedly. So we always will definitely have what we call a case debrief, where we'll be able to sit back and analyze what did we do right, where should we improve on what we were doing. So we'll definitely have that, so that we'll be brainstorming on how the entire matter was handled and see where did we go wrong, what could we have done better, all that kind of thing. Definitely we'll be having a similar status conference on that.
At the heart of the trial was Honorable Lady Justice Diana Mochache, who presided over the trial from its start in Milimani to its conclusion in Kahawa law courts.
Convicts may not have physically wielded the weapons that caused harm to the victims, but their facilitation directly enabled attackers who were heavily armed with guns, grenades, and suicide vests. The very nature of the weapons was designed not only to commit mass murder, but also terrify the nation. The victim impact reports note that one of the survivors of the attack still has a bullet or bullets lodged in his body that has resulted to medical complications and substantial medical bills that continue to strain his financial resources. In addition to the primary victims, the pre-sentence reports note that several secondary victims who lost loved ones continue to grapple with grief. Many vividly recall memories of their departed family members and friends and struggle to find closure. The emotional scars left by the attack runs deep, affecting their daily lives and mental well-being. One such secondary victim is the family of the late Jason Jacob Spindler, an American citizen who was hailed by his family as being a brilliant, kind, and determined man who brought joy to not only his family but to all the people with whom he interacted. The family remains heartbroken and grieving for not only the loss of their son, but also the irreparable fracture of their family stemming from his death. The first convict, Hussein Mohammed Abdile, is sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for the offense of conspiracy to commit an offense contrary to Section 23(2) as read with Section 23(4) of Porter. B. The first convict, Hussein Mohammed Abdile, is sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for the offense of facilitating a terrorist act contrary to Section 9A of Porter. The two sentences shall run consecutively. Cumulatively, the first convict shall serve 30 years imprisonment from the date of his arrest. The second convict, Muhammad Abdi Ali, is sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for the offense of conspiracy to commit an offense contrary to Section 23(2) as read with Section 23(4) of the Porter. The second convict, Muhammad Abdi Ali, is sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for each of the 14 counts for the offenses of facilitating a terrorist act contrary to Section 9A of Porter. The sentences for the 14 counts shall run concurrently. The sentences in D and E above shall run consecutively. That is to say, the second convict shall serve 30 years imprisonment. The sentence shall be computed less the period spent in pretrial custody.
This is a landmark decision that means great to this country in the fight against terrorism. This decision has shown how much Kenya is fighting terrorism and how much prepared we are when it comes to terrorist attacks. This conviction brings to fore on how terrorism can be fought by our systems. I say systems because in terrorism, it's not an offense or a crime that can be fought by one agency, that is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. It took multi-agency for us to be able to first investigate and carry through the trial, because we know very well terrorism is has a global network, meaning that the actors are not necessarily in the place of action. There are many. So for for investigators and the prosecutors, for them to be able to proceed with the investigations and eventually do prosecutions, you must have collaboration. And that is why in this case we had to collaborate with the agencies like the anti-terror police unit of the DCI, the National Intelligence Service, the National Registration Bureau, and many agencies, including asset recovery, for us to be able to get the links and the connections of how this attack was coordinated. Because from the investigations and the prosecution, we realized that there was funding that was coming from outside to the people who are carrying out or planning the attack. So we were able to coordinate with all these agencies for us to be able to carry out proper investigation and finally prosecute and be able to get this landmark conviction. It was a lengthy trial, and the reason being there were many applications, both by the defense and by the prosecution, on points of law and fact. And that's why we had so many applications which derailed the main hearing of the suit. But after we had cleared all the applications, when the matter was set down to hearing, it took us only 14 days for us to be able to complete the trial. I also thank the judiciary, most of the Chief Justice, for allowing the magistrate who had been promoted to be a judge to continue with the trial, for us not to delay the prosecution. Because if we were to change to a new magistrate, it meant that we are supposed to start the matter de novo. And de novo means starting afresh. And when you start a matter afresh, so many things happen. You may find maybe the evidence had been tampered with, so that affects the outcome. But since we were allowed to proceed, the prosecution took a very short period, and that's why we were able to get this conviction. This is for the first time we have also gotten a conviction on terrorism financing, something which is not common. Terrorism financing is the main actor in terrorist attacks. So if you are able to counter terrorism financing, then you are up to the task when it comes to fighting terrorism. And we were also able to employ plea bargain. It really assisted us, because the plea bargain is where one of the suspects volunteered to plea bargain and become a prosecution witness. And that's how we were able to understand how the whole activity was done, how financing was done, how money to the tune of over $1 million was sent to the planners for them to be able to come up with this attack. So confidently I can say Kenya is on the right track insofar as terrorism fight is concerned. And at the same time, this has helped in Kenya getting out of the grey list, because currently Kenya is grey listed, and one of the key areas we are supposed to improve for us to be removed from the grey list is the war against terrorism and terrorism financing.
To our nation and region, Kenya has endured several devastating attacks, including the 1998 United States Embassy bombing in Nairobi, the 2013 Westgate Mall siege, as well as the 2015 Garissa University and the 2019 DusitD2 complex attacks. However, through heightened vigilance, enhanced intelligence, and strengthened international cooperation, Kenya has made notable progress in bringing perpetrators to justice. Just last month, 2 individuals were found guilty of aiding the DusitD2 attackers. In the Garissa University case, the courts in 2019 found 3 individuals culpable and were sentenced to life imprisonment and 41 years each. Currently, 24 terrorism-related cases remain active before our courts, the majority involving membership in international terrorist organizations. These efforts have not only led to successful prosecutions, but have also significantly suppressed such attacks and contribute to enhanced national security.
The DusitD2 conviction was more than a legal victory. It was a message to the world. Kenya stands resilient.